evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on our Early Childhood Global Spotlight series that we have been doing on Facebook Live. Dear friends, today we are glad to be joined by Stacy from Texas, US. I thank you, Stacy, for joining us on this Spotlight series with us. So, before we get started, I would like to give a small introduction to our audience about Stacy and what she has been doing on early childhood development all these years. So, Stacy Benge is an early childhood speaker who approaches learning in the early years with practicality and common sense. In addition to holding a Master of Science degree in Human Development and Family Studies, Stacy spent 10 years in the early childhood classroom teaching children ages birth to 5. Stacy has spent last 20 years sharing his passion for child development with fellow early professionals by designing and presenting continuing education courses and seminars. Stacy Bench is master level trader number 1581 on the Texas Trainer Registry. So, Stacy, welcome to our Spotlight show. How
Thank
are you
you.
doing
Thank you for
today?
having me. Doing well, doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
So, you had a fantastic vacation, I think.
Yes.
So,
Go ahead.
tell us about your vacation now.
About my, what'd you say? About my vacation, you said, or my vocation?
Yes. Vacation. Where have you been? So, because we
Okay,
were not in touch. So,
I just got back from Colorado. I was sharing with you. I've had a season of life change. I have two boys who are 18 and almost 22, and they are both now off at university. So for the first time in 22 years, I have no children in my house. So,
uh,
so my husband and I ran away to Breckenridge, Colorado, which is much cooler temperatures than here in Texas. And we were gone for a little bit over 2 weeks and just got home this week. So
fantastic.
yeah,
Yes.
so it was nice.
So, Stacy, tell our viewers about your journey as a early childhood educator and what drives you with children. Tell us about your journey.
Okay, when I was in high school, I was about 17 years old. I actually started working in a program at my church with children of school age, so ages 5 to like 11, 12. And so after school, like I was the camp counselor, and then during the summer. Well, my summer between my freshman and sophomore year of college, my parents had moved, so I had to go find a different place to work in the summers. And I went and applied at a preschool. And at that, I was applying for their school age program. And when I got there, they were like, "We've already hired that position, but we have an opening for the 3-year-olds. Are you interested?" And I naively said yes. And so that was my first experience working with children under the age of 5. And I'm not joking. My very first day, the administrator took me to the room and she said, "Be loving but firm. Always count the kids that you have, and I'll come check on you later." And like that was my introduction to 3-year-olds. I had no clue what I was doing. I knew nothing about child development. And needless to say, that summer was probably one of the worst summers working I ever had. And I left and went back to college and told my parents I would never work with young children again. And those are famous last words. But I actually started studying child development in college. And when I did that, I started looking back on that summer and realizing that the issue was not the kids. The issue was me. I didn't understand young children. I didn't know anything about, the developmental domains. My expectations were not realistic. And I started getting hooked into learning more about young children. And so that kind of started me on my journey. I got my bachelor's degree in child development, and then my master's as well, human development, family studies, which is essentially child development. I went back into the classroom and realized that if we're developmentally appropriate, if we're really child-centered, that this can be absolutely wonderful. So I taught in the classroom up until my youngest son started kindergarten. Of course, I told you now he's 18. So once he started kindergarten, I left the classroom and started doing consulting and training. And I've been doing that for the last, 15 years or so.
Amazing. I think great that you spent so many years in early childhood. Tell us, Stacy, about the impact COVID-19 had on early childhood education. Are the preschools open in the city? What is happening on the overall situation on early childhood education right now?
So when you look at the states and early childhood over here, you've got to realize that our education systems are governed by they're governed by each individual state. So what we do in Texas is different than what Oklahoma, Louisiana does. And so in Texas, most of our preschools, which are centers that serve children birth to 5, they're private, and they don't fall under our Department of Education. They fall under our Department of Family and Protective Services. And actually, through COVID, they've been able to stay open. So they haven't had to close. Now, a lot of preschools have closed because parents have pulled the children out. And so just financially, they haven't been able to stay open. But overall, our preschools are still open. The regulations have changed. The ratios have gotten smaller. The drop off and pickup is a little bit different. But overall, the preschools are still open.
I hope things go back to normal. Even we are, everybody's hoping for the best times.
Yes.
Right, Stacy, what are the top 5 pillars of holistic curriculum and their importance in early childhood development, according to you? The main topic of our discussion. So, a very generic one, but still, we want to hear from you. What is your thought on the top 5 pillars of holistic curriculum?
So when we're looking at designing our programs, and the 5 pillars I would give, I wouldn't say these are in any certain order. It's just kind of like the 5 things you would need for a good, solid program. And keeping in mind that curriculum it's not just the activities you do in your classroom. Curriculum is everything the child experiences from the time they walk into the school until the time that they leave. So I would say one of the first things is being developmentally appropriate. And to be developmentally appropriate, we have to understand child development. I mentioned to you, I have 2 degrees in child development. I'm still learning about child development, but we've got to recognize the whole child. We've got cognitive development, social and emotional development, language, and physical. So we've got to make sure that our environments are addressing the whole child, not just that academic component. So making sure that our programs are developmentally appropriate, we're meeting children where they are, we're respecting where they are, and then we're doing everything around that. So I would say that would be the first one I would mention. The second one would be child-centered. And what this means is that what you're doing in the here and now are meeting the needs of the children you have in the here and now. So I always say, if you've been in this field a long time, you could have had 10 children this year, and next year you have 10 more children, and they're completely different. So we've got to make sure that what we're doing right now is centered around the children that we have right now. Developmentally, they might be a little bit different, even though they might be the same age. They might have different interests. They're going to have different backgrounds. So making sure that we're always evaluating what we're doing and we're meeting the needs of the children we have right now. The third one I would say is that the environment respects the child. And the environment is our decor, it's our materials, it is our schedule, but it's always respecting the child. Right now, over here, we're in the back to school phase. And so we see a lot of teachers posting like their bulletin boards and they've decorated their doors. And it's one of those things, it's like, okay, it looks great, but is it, is that really for the child or is it for us, for the parents? And so we're always evaluating our environment. We also want to make sure the environment belongs to the child. And so when we design the room, that we give children time to go play in it, and they have the right to go in and play with the materials as they want. Sometimes we design a room, and then when it comes time for children to play, we're like, oh, I'm not sure, but making sure that really and truly children get that opportunity. So the fourth thing that I would say is child-led play. And this kind of goes back to our environment. This goes back to making sure that our schedules have the opportunity for children to have child-led play. And keeping in mind, I think as a field that we have talked a lot about children being hands-on, interactive, engaging, but sometimes we say that is play. If it's designed by the adult, that's playful learning. And there's a time and place for that. And it's great that we've gotten away from worksheets and flashcards and we're doing hands-on experiences instead of that. But we've also got to make sure that children have the opportunity to guide their play. Child-led play is one of the things that we're sadly missing in children's childhoods. It's one of those things that when we look at issues that children might have down the line, if it's not being able to connect with their friends, or it might even be a reading and writing issue, a lot of times we can connect that back to children did not get the opportunity for child-led play. When we look at things that make people successful as adults, a lot of times it is the self-regulation, the self-motivation, the self-control, being able to handle what we call the hard knocks. Children develop that through play. And so that child-led play, where we design the environment and then we as the adult get out of the way and just let children play, that's one of the strongest things that we can have in our program. We need to trust play, we need to respect play, and we need to make sure that we're not looking at it as something that we do when we're finished, or we need to make sure that we're not discounting the value of it. But that, to me, that's a strong pillar that is needed in the early childhood classroom. And the fifth one that I would mention would be the adult-child interaction. And notice that I don't say the adult instruction. To me, the adult instruction is probably one of the lowest things on the totem pole. It's the interaction. It is when the child walks into the classroom, getting down on the child's level, taking that minute to say, hey, Jackson, I'm so glad you're here today. I can't wait for all the great things that's going to happen. But making that connection and then just being there to have conversations. I think one of the most important things we can do as teachers is to be available. So when the child brings something to you, that you can take that time and have a conversation. Tell me about this picture that you've drawn. Oh, Miss Stacy, come here and look at my blocks. Ooh, can you tell me about it? But taking those few minutes just
Absolutely.
to hear.
I feel that once you maintain that you make that kind of connection with the child, the sense of belongingness of the child also towards the school immediately increases. And then the child, the trust factor, one of the very key and important things in, I will say, early childhood education is to develop that trust. And then if the trust will trust you, then he or she will be able to learn things in the way you want them to learn. And to bring trust, you will have to come down to their level.
Absolutely.
And that is the reason why parents ask, and I sometimes wonder that parents must be thinking that why is this teacher behaving like a cartoon? Why are they acting all the time? Because children love cartoons. Children love, acting. They love drama. They like that dramatic, those kind of expressions. So that is the reason why teachers have to bring themselves down to the level in which children accept them and feel that they are funny, they're cool. I think
Uh-huh.
so. Very. I love that point. Yes, Stacy. Carry on. Carry on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and one more thing too to that point is when children have that trust with the adult in the classroom or at home as well, um, they are more willing to take a risk. They're more willing to step outside the box because if I make a mistake, I know it's going to be okay with the adult. And so we actually see children progress a little bit further if they have that trust and that consistent relationship with the adult. So I think it's just us being available to be ready to, when the child invites us into the play or the child wants to share something with us, it's probably one of the most powerful things we can do in the classroom. And I think one more thing too on the interaction, and this kind of goes back to the play, we don't always have to be guiding everything. So sometimes our role as the adult is to get out of the way. The child is leading that play. They don't need me to step in. There's a saying, you stop the learning by trying to teach. And so you've got to just read those cues. And sometimes it's just pulling back and letting the child go and play. And this, I know this is probably going to tie into something we're about to talk about in a second, but this is your opportunity to observe and document and assess, because this is where you're learning about the child. So, but that adult interaction, when to interact, when to pull back. But again, it comes with building that relationship with the child.
I think great points on the key things. Generally people only talk about those social, emotional development, physical development, creative. So there are some new things, that new thought that you have given us to our community. I think it's great. So play is one of the key components of early childhood development. What are your views, and can you suggest some do-at-home activities for families and playing? Because see, there are a lot of people in our country, because of the cases of coronavirus are increasing every day, are finding hard to go out. So what are the things that you can suggest to parents to indulge the children in playing inside the houses?
Yes. And just to kind of reiterate, just, my, obviously I talked about play a little bit earlier. I'm a huge advocate of playing, the parent child play experience, but then just the child independently playing or just children playing autonomously as well. But just to kind of reassure parents that when children are playing at home, don't think it's a waste of time. That is a learning experience. Children cannot play without learning, and they cannot learn without playing. Those two, it's not a dichotomy. Those two go hand in hand. So encouraging play at home is so absolutely important. So some things that to do at home, I always say kind of start with your own childhood as inspiration. What were some of the simple things you did as a child? I think sometimes we try to make things too complex, and we've got to embrace the simplicity of things. And so, were there games that you played as a child that you really enjoyed? Like playing maybe simple card games, or there might be a board game that you have. A lot of times when you ask children, hey, you can come play with me, they're going to say yes because they want your attention. They want that relationship. But going with your own childhood, my brother is almost 6 years older than me, and so some of the things that we played, we had so much fun as children where I would get into our mom's laundry basket, or I'd get on a blanket and a sheet, and my brother would just like run around the house dragging me. And we could do that. Have your child get on a blanket or sheet and just start moving around the house. Okay, it's super simple, but there's so much. First of all, it's super fun. But when you look at physical development and what the brain and the body and the muscles and the internal senses are developing as you're riding along on the sheet, very beneficial. So simple things like that. Loose parts, and I don't know if that's a term y'all use over here, but over there, but over here, loose parts are things like cards, dominoes, buttons, marbles, measuring cups, measuring spoons,
Yeah.
empty boxes. It's always a joke that you can buy a child the best toy in the world, but what do they really want to play with? It's the box, And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes, yes, they do. They do. They do. Sometimes they laugh. They just don't want to throw the packing. They don't just like the box.
yeah,
And yeah.
Well, and there's when you look at that, when you're playing with the box and you're getting in and out of the box and you're putting things in and out of the box, it's developing spatial awareness and spatial relationships, and they're just trying to figure that out. So don't discount some of those simple materials that you could bring in. Find things that your children are interested in, and is it like, are they interested in a certain TV show or whatever? And can we get materials or manipulatives for them to play with? But just finding those simple experiences. I think take the pressure off yourself as a parent. You don't have to make it like this deep, meaningful experience. Just the simple experience is going to have a lot of amazing outcomes. Another thing too is involve your children in just simple household chores you have to do. When
Yes,
by the time,
very important. Yes. They can water plants. They can give water to the pets at home, and they can fold the bed sheets, and they can do enormous amount of. They can actually sort out vegetables for you when you get there after you've cleaned them. Definitely. So there
yeah,
are a lot of small works that they can do, and this is the correct time. You will not get this time again in life to teach
right,
those important life skills,
exactly.
at this moment, because they're at home, you are at home, you're spending more time with them. So I think very, very important to just keep them engaged. And there's always play, there's always play. Even sorting out things, and giving them responsibility. Like I have given responsibility of loading the dishwasher. So
Mhm.
I have twins, and they're now 8-year old. So
Uh-huh.
they responsibility to put everything in the dishwasher and remove them, and take the clothes and put them to put them in the washing machine and all that. So those kind of little responsibilities they've started taking, and I think that they will continue now because it's a habit now for more than I think couple of months they've been doing it.
Uh-huh.
So those kind of things you can engage your children. Very
Yes.
nice.
Like I said, and it's life skills, it's empowering, and it's of course I'm at the point where both my boys are off at university, and you start hoping, okay, I hope they're washing their sheets like they're supposed to. I hope they're, and I have to go back to, I did teach them to do that. They were involved in keeping the household going. We hope that they're still doing that, but
Boys in a hostel, I'm not sure whether they will
yeah.
clean it every day. So because
Yeah.
so they learn it and then they forget when they go in the hostel because
Yes,
there's so many
yes,
other things to do. Of
yeah.
course, yeah. So we have, Stacey, we have a lot of parents as viewers. They are always keen to know the magic ways for child to excel in academics. So
Yes.
what are your,
So
and I'm talking about our preschoolers. I'm not talking about so every time we've been approached with a lot of parents. Oh, is my child? What is the grade? Is he in the top 5 children of the class? Is he doing very good? So those academics
mhm.
is something that parents really want to know. So is there any magical ways that you can suggest for them to excel in academics?
Yes. So I joke, if there was a magic or secret formula, I would have already written the book and I'd be rich right now. There's not. And so I can speak to this question from two different perspectives, from the parent perspective as well as the developmentalist perspective. And so I'm going to start with the child development aspect first. This kind of comes back to what I mentioned earlier. We have to respect the developmental processes children go through, and that requires patience on our part. All children progress through the same stages; they just go at different rates, it's not a matter of us introducing things earlier. It's not a matter of us doing things earlier. It's a matter of us stepping back and respecting, okay, just developmentally, this is what's happening. A good, I think, example would be children developing physically and going through puberty. We can't make that happen faster or slower. It's the child's body, and we tend to respect that when it's the child's time to go through puberty, the hormones start happening, and we recognize it. Well, that happens on all the other domains of development. Cognitively, children go through these processes and these steps. From the physical, brain and body coordinating as a team, they go through steps. From a language standpoint, and I think this is very important, especially when it comes to reading and writing, introducing reading at an earlier age is not going to push your child through academics. Your child being an early reader is really and truly not going to mean that they're going to be ahead. In fact, when we start pushing those things too early, we start skipping steps, and we might start to see issues down the line. I remember when my oldest son was in first grade, so over here, this is 6 turning 7, his first grade teacher said, we're getting all these kids who come in who can read. In other words, they can decode the words, but she goes, they don't understand anything that they're reading because the language skills are lacking. And so she goes, we're having to scrap everything, go back to ground zero and fill in the gaps. And so what we want to do is be patient, really respect the developmental process and build that strong foundation. So it's like building a house. And birth to 8, we're getting that foundation nice and solid. And if we could be patient with that, when it comes time to build the house, that house is going to be a good, solid house. If you start building the house before the foundation is really there, the house will at some point crumble. And so when we step back, respect the developmental process, let children have authentic experiences, let them play, we will see that this foundation gets firmly built. So just kind of encouraging. And one more thing too, children being successful in life, when we look at people who are successful in adulthood, and I mentioned this earlier, it's not always the person who was top of the class. It wasn't always the person with the highest IQ. Usually it's the person who can interact. Go ahead.
You only realize this when you grow up.
Yes.
You talk about all the people, Bill Gates and so many other people, they were not, in fact, many of them had not had their proper schooling. And that's what we read in books. So it's not really, if the child is in the top 3 or top 5, that does not mean the child will become successful. I'm really
right.
very, very, consciously say that.
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
And that kind of comes back to, we've got to respect and develop the whole child, because that creates the whole human being who's going to be able to handle life. And so that emotional development is so important. That the physical development, just sitting, if you have to sit at a desk or whatever, that requires a lot of our internal senses being developed and our core being developed. So sometimes it's those small things that we overlook because we're trying so hard to get children to a certain point. So I think if we just step back, respect child development, the developmental process, let them play, be patient, we're going to hit these goals. It's going to be a little bit later than we expected, but and then I want to speak to this from a parental standpoint. I know the pressures of raising children and the pressure of when parents start comparing children, and it's hard. And I remember, I think my children were about ages 6 and 9, somewhere in there, maybe a little bit older, that I kind of had this epiphany, and I'm like, you know what, my kids are going to be okay. My kids are going to be okay. And I think it was when my oldest son, we have over here, with the elementary schools, we have the kind of the high stake testings and stuff. And I remember my son stressing out that he was going to fail the test. And I'm like, what happens if you fail? You're not going to be held back a grade. And I remember as a parent kind of letting that go. And so speaking to you as parents, even if you have those preschool age, your child's going to be okay. Your child's going to do great things. If your child's not where you think they should be right now, don't worry about that. Just embrace this time, get face to face with them, build the relationship, play. build all those fundamental skills, that those developmental processes, but your child's going to be fine, you know? And
Usually very hard for us to explain to the parents that every child has his own learning curve. Okay, some children learn faster, and now they will start comparing. No, that no, this my neighbor's child, she can recite the entire poem to everyone, and she can recite the entire rhyme to everyone. My child has not been able to speak a single line. So there's a lot of comparison that parents do, which is also very wrong, because child, there's always, we've seen that every child is unique. Every child takes his or her own time
mhm,
to learn things. And we've also seen that some children are very good at maybe saying rhymes or singing rhymes or telling stories, while there are other children who are very good in academics. So
uh-huh,
learning completely depends on their interest, and a lot to do with the environment that they get from birth till the time they come to the school.
right.
Because we a lot of these kind of speech issues which have come into with small children, because parents don't have time to speak to them.
Mhm,
So a lot of speech issues also that actually children go through. But then I think that very importantly, that relax, he or she is just
uh-huh,
a small baby, and they're going to
yeah,
grow, and they're going to grow high. And this learning and academics is something that they're going to go through lifelong. We are still learning at the age that we are. We are still talking and learning from each other. So the learning never stops, I think. So very important. Anything else that you want to say on this, Stacy?
well, and just kind of one more thing to think of too, and it might sound corny when I say this, but or kind of cheesy, but I'm like, children have only been on the earth 2, 3, 4, 5 years. If you were in a job for that amount of time, you're still kind of considered a novice. And I think it's sometimes our expectations are, they're 3 year olds, they should be doing this. Well, no, they're brand new to this. They're brand new to their bodies, and there's things still developing. So I think it's just, again, us being patient. Um, I keep kind of going back to the reading aspect. Research says that if children are early readers, it doesn't mean they're going to be better readers, and it doesn't mean that their IQ is higher. And so just keeping that in mind. Earlier is not better. It's the taking the time, building the strong foundation. And then one more thing, I do want to say this for parents, because I am an empty nester now. So you start reflecting on your time as a parent. Um, just enjoy the time you have with them, and I know we're getting a lot of extra time now because of COVID, but this time period you have with your child, you will not get again. And so just enjoy it, because when they go to leave your house, those are the things you start going, I wish I had a little bit more time on that. Yeah, that's the thing. As a parent, you start kind of getting emotional about.
Absolutely. I completely agree with it. So, Stacey, what are your views on assessment in childhood? Now, I saw a blog that you've written on assessment. Do you
Yes.
think assessment in early childhood, in kindergarten or do you think that is it necessary to have assessment, or what are your views on assessment? I think. Oh,
So I think assessment is kind of there's two sides of the coin to it. I think it's always good that we are paying attention, that we're always kind of watching, that we always have some sort of a reflection or checkpoint. This doesn't always mean on the child, though. This could be us assessing our environment. This could be assessing our reactions as a teacher, or as the adult. So I think assessment in that aspect is beneficial if we just use it for okay, here's a mirror, this is what I'm seeing about myself, or you know what, this is not quite working in my classroom, we need to change that. Now, assessment from the standpoint of the high stake testing, where assessment guides everything we do, that's where I think we need to kind of back off. So I'm not particularly a fan of like an assessment where we're always sitting children down and giving them a question, see if they can answer it. how we need to approach assessment is through natural environments. So the whole purpose of education is for children to take knowledge and apply it to real world. I mean, as you know, that's what we do as adults. So for young children, their real world is play. That's when we see what they know and what they're thinking and what they're figuring out. And so that's another great thing in our learning environments for having child-led play is when children start, you know, this autonomous experience and we as the adult can kind of pull ourselves back. This is where you need to have your pen and paper, and you need to just start documenting, doing running records. What are the children doing? What do I see? And I always kept portfolios for children in my classroom, and I would just I allowed an hour and a half of child-led play in my classroom in the morning. And so that's a lot of time. And I was able to get a lot of evidence, a lot of documentation. And I would just start putting these records in the children's portfolios. I would kind of go back and analyze it a little bit. What is this telling me about them? But that way, if a parent ever asked, okay, how is my child doing? Or if a parent came to me with a concern, I could go pull the portfolio. And I kind of had this evidence of what I saw with their child in play. And that tells a lot of the story. I do think it's important that we remember that children are more than developmental checklists. So when you are doing your observation, you can look for some of those developmental things, but this is really where you get to see into their mind. You know, let's go a little bit deeper with it. Let's kind of respect that too. But so I think again that assessment is the checkpoint, but it does not need to be what guides every single thing in your classroom.
Yes, I mean, great. I completely agree with your views. So, friends, we had some great views from Stacy on early childhood holistic development. I hope this discussion has been very beneficial for all of you. My sincere thanks to Stacy for sharing us with us today on our and I would like to thank all the viewers on Facebook for taking their time out to watch this show. May you all have a good day and a happy weekend. Stay safe until we meet again. Thank you so much, Stacy.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you so much, and bye bye. Have a happy weekend.
Bye.